All right, so today is a revisit. Oh, I had actually added a couple things to it, and apparently I didn't save it, so it printed out the original. So I taught this in September 22nd of 20. No, I taught this in 2022. So I don't know what happened to the other date there, because I usually try to put both of them, so I can always look. So I don't know what happened, but anyway, from my place computer to the printer, so hopefully nothing else got changed. So as seasons change, so do our wardrobes, and I'm finding that like Maine is starting to get really cold, so I was at Martin's, which is a discount store there, like Stites, and I was buying sweatshirts and stuff and flannel pajamas, and I'm like, this place gets cold so quick. But so our wardrobes change, and my issue is right now, all my clothes and everything are in boxes in Devin's garage right now, Devin and Kristen's garage. So this morning, Devin's got chickens. Okay, we're getting used to this, because I walk out and I stepped in chicken poop. And so I'm like, they were old sandals anyway, but it had occurred to me this morning, I don't have any shoes. I left them in Maine. I just have this kind of, now they're ratty old pair of sandals that I've been wearing, constantly. So I'm like, so that means I got to go over to Devin's place and find shoes. And so I was like combing through boxes and stuff, and then when I come out this morning to leave for church, he's out there with a hose hosing down the chicken stuff out of the driveway. I said, hose down my sandals too, please. So, but anyway, my wardrobe's there, but it's time to do the change. I don't know if you guys have already changed out to fall clothes, or if you just grab cardigan sweaters, that kind of thing. And I tend to be cold, and my parents keep their house very, very warm. Oh, so my husband's like, Julie, you got to get unacclimated to that, because I'm like, Burr, it's freezing in here. Turn that fan off, because it's very warm. But in Ohio, we're blessed with 4 distinctive seasons. A lot of places, like Florida, that's not really quite that way. Maine, it's too far, too much season, like, oh my goodness, it's winter for half of the year there. And but I really like Ohio weather. I think it's you get some of each, and it's not too severe of each. That's the way I feel about it, having lived other places. And while I may use some of my fall pieces in the upcoming winter season, most of my winter items that I'll change out before too long, they're seasonal to the winter season, like sweaters. So most of the time I'm not grabbing sweaters till the end of fall. You know, maybe one or two to carry me through the fall, like I said, cardigans or that kind of thing. But the few items that work in both the fall and the winter, or spring and summer, however you look at it, they're useful. But we don't throw out the rest of the clothes because at this moment I can only wear this. No, we know that we can keep those clothes because that season's going to come around again, and maybe I'll be this size, maybe I won't. You know, maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. But I'm not going to throw it away until I know it. And so I simply pack them up so they're accessible if I happen to need them, or until the weather is appropriate for them again. So just as we have different seasons of weather, we also have different seasons of life. And I think I've really, really been thinking about this a lot lately. So that's why I went and dug this one out, because I've never lived this life before. Does that make sense to you? Mm-hmm. So the things that I'm experiencing now, I've never experienced before. And it's just, I'm trying not to be blindsided by things and just trust the Lord. But I keep going back to this phrase that we have seasons of life. And, you know, like, I don't enjoy Maine winters. I just don't. They're too severe, you know. But God, yes, if you told me, I would go, you know, I would move back there. But I like Ohio. So I just have to understand that I may not love every season of life like I love the summertime. And I really love fall. Fall is probably my favorite. Anyone else identify with that? Yeah. So if I could choose one that was going to be the lengthy one, or maybe even all the time, that would probably be the one I'd choose. But that's not the way it works, you know, unless your favorite season is summer and you move to Florida. Or California. So, but even they have their different seasons, you know, like mom and dad get out of Dodge when it starts hitting, you know, like end of April, beginning of May, because then the temperatures skyrocket, so it's a little too warm. But the Lord's just teaching me about seasons of life and reminding me that it's not always going to be what I want. It's not always going to be my favorite season, you know, but they're God-appointed times. Seasons of life are God-appointed time. Let's go to Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verses 1 to 11. I'm using a different Bible, so forgive me.
Tiny writing.
Yeah.
Goodness.
It's got lots of, where am I going here? It's got lots of room on the outsides, yeah, but it is tiny writing. And I'm so used to Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes. I'm so used to my little blue one that I leave here at church, and I've got all my notes in it. In fact, I was sitting there, and my nephew that preaches, his little boy's looking at my Bible like, what on earth, you know, because I just write lots of notes in it, and I've never been one for the notebook because I lose the notebook. But the Bible, I'll just write it in the side. Sometimes I'll write the preacher and the title. And Brother Money was here once, and a lot of you know Brother Money. If not, you'll get introduced to him for missions conference. We love Brother Money, if his daughter doesn't have the baby anyway. And one time he was like, talking to my husband, he said, I'm not sure if I preach this message here or not. I said, which message is it? And he looks at me and he told me the name. I said, just a second, I'll let you know. And I went and I was like, yep. You know, because I had Brother Money and I put the money sign and then the year, you know. And he's like, that's helpful. So that worked out good. But that's the way, you know, way I do. So different Bible totally throws me off. But Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verses 1 to 11, to everything there is a season. Oh, man, I just need to grasp hold of that. Not just talking weather here, but talking about my life. To everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under the heaven. And I wrote beside that God-appointed times. Verse 2, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to pluck up that which is planted, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to break down and a time to build up. And just think about that, a time to break down, a time to build up. You can think of that like masonry, like, or construction, build up and break down. But I tend to think more emotionally, that kind of thing. So, yeah. A time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to cast away stones and a time to gather stones together, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing. Verse 6, a time to get and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to cast away. Let me help some of you hoarders here. Verse 7, a time to rend, which means to rip or force apart, and a time to sow, a time to keep silence. Boy, this is a struggle for me. Time to keep silence and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time of war and a time of peace. What profit hath he that worketh in that wherein he laboreth? I have seen the travail which God hath given the sons of men to be exercised in it. Verse 11, this, when I think to everything there is a season, my next thought, he hath made everything beautiful in his time. Also he hath set the world in their heart, so that no man can find out the work that God maketh from the beginning to the end. So, the beginning and closing of it, to everything there is a season, he hath made everything beautiful in his time. We want to make sure that we're dressing for the right season in our life. To be honest, for this season of my life, I feel like I need to find some better clothes. I feel like I'm not handling things as well as I want to. And I just keep asking the Lord to please show me what that looks like, because I'm not even sure. I come back and I left one apartment and now we're living at Devon's, so I come back and things are all packed away, and my husband, he's got such wonderful vision, and now I'm starting to see the apartment to transform. Jody knows that they did the renovation. So, but I've told my husband many times since Tuesday night, I feel like my life is upside down, like someone just, took my box of my life and went, but I have to understand, this is my season of life right now. And, and I have such a supportive husband. He's just, it's going to be okay. It's good. Brought me coffee this morning. It was kind of like living in a construction zone, right now. And I was vacuuming yesterday, and Devin comes in, he's like, Mom, it's a construction zone in here. I said, I have to live here though, so we're going to get this vacuumed up. But I want to handle it. I want to do what my mom's doing. And I feel like I'm falling short of that. But anyway, talking about making sure you're dressing for the season. Every season that God has appointed has a purpose. And I put little periods after everyone to be, really, really point that out. Every season of our life that God has appointed has a purpose. God's given me this season, and it has a purpose. And I don't want to be the one that misses it because I'm so busy like, this is awful. I don't love this season. When is fall coming? I don't want to waste it. I don't want to waste those precious moments learning from my mom. I don't want to waste the time with my dad. I don't want to waste the reunion with my family when I come back, or the time I get to spend with each of you when I come back. I don't want to waste moments wishing for a different season. You see what I'm saying? And it has to be such a conscious thing, because if it feels like a blind side, and I feel like I could just live in the teetering, like, oh my goodness, I'm still teetering from the blow of this and the blow of that. And I told my husband this morning, I said, everybody has hard things. I'm not the only one going through a hard time. Every one of us is going through something in our life. And my prayer is for me not to just be like thinking of my hard time all the time. And I know I talk about it a lot, and I'd say I'm sorry, but I'm not. You guys are such prayer warriors, so it's your fault. You've made me, turn to you. But I wanna embrace it. I'll tell you a little story about embracing, and that's my dad has a food bucket, and all the food that you throw away in his household gets thrown into the food bucket, and he uses it for compost. But while he's doing that, Dad's seeing everything you throw away. Okay? And my dad was in Vietnam, and it came out recently why he was like that. I knew growing up, we were never punished with food, ever. There was never, you go to bed with no supper or dessert. I remember Mom buying diet food to help her with her diet, and us finding it and going, we want that, and her saying no, and my dad saying, Rachel, you don't ever keep food from the kids. And he wasn't mean about it, but he was just clarifying that. He said, buy more. And it's because my dad, when he was in Vietnam, saw kids come up to him while he's eating and just with their eyes big for food, and he'd give them half their food. These little Vietnamese kids, they had nothing. They were starving. And so that's always on my mind. And then my dad's ultra thrifty. So if you throw something away, it better be bad, and you need to know why you let it go bad. So and at first I'm like, but it has shown me how wasteful I am. And it has shown me I need to be a good steward of his money, of my dad's money. And that is a lesson that I've just really been thinking about. And because at first I was like, this is kind of annoying, And then I thought, wait a second. I totally get his line of thinking there is, he said, you know how many kids would love to have that? And then my next thought being, and it's his money. I need to steward it well. I need to plan better. And so I've gotten a lot better at planning out. And, he said, I'd rather you take the car and go to town and get more food than to let food go bad. And so I've really embraced that. Anyway, so we just need to learn to trust God in everything we do and learn the lessons that he's trying to teach us. So there is one of the lessons, I was thinking about like a title for a Sunday school lesson be like lessons from the, I want Mom to do it. Lessons from the chemo chair is what I want, like the stuff that goes by through her mind, that kind of thing, because it's just so much. I'm not on that side of it. I'm on the other side, and there's lessons to be learned by both. So anyway, my dad's food bucket has taught me that lesson. So anyway, so dressing for the season, here are a few tips. And Proverbs 3:5, let's just turn there real quick. I don't want to pass that over. Talking about how in the blue, how every season that God has appointed has a purpose. Just trust him. Proverbs 3:5 says, trust in the Lord with all thine heart, lean not unto thine own understanding. And then 6 says, in all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths. There are going to be times where we just don't understand, And I keep having go through my mind, Dad saying, why would your God give her cancer if she serves him more than anybody else I know? And I have to come back to this verse. Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, lean not unto thine own understanding. It would seem that what he says is true, but as a Christian, I know better because of that verse. And I can't lean unto my own understanding like, yeah, she is faithful to God, and why would he do that? Nope, I can't. You can't go that way. You can't live in those spots. I'm not saying we're wrong to have those thoughts, and sometimes an unsaved person like my dad will be the one that puts that thought in your head, but quickly use scripture for it. I have to go back to that verse and say, okay, in all my ways I need to acknowledge him. He'll show me which way to go, and I need to not lean on my own understanding like what makes sense to me, because God is in control here. God knows what's best. God has a purpose and a plan, and this is the season we're in. And I'm not gonna spend it all waiting for fall to come. But each of us are in different seasons of life, so here are a few tips for dressing for the season. The first one is, don't waste your season whining when you can be working. It's not in vain. 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 58. 1 Corinthians 15:58. I could definitely, I told my husband, I'm so weak. I never knew I was so weak, you know. I never knew I didn't want this season. And that's how it feels. And I have to stop and ask God, show me how not to do that. You know, I don't want to be that way. I want to not whine. I want to work because I know it's not in vain. But sometimes what we know to be true, you know, I know it maybe in my heart, in my head is not, you know, saying, yeah, but Julie, look at this, this and this, you know. But in my heart, I know Scripture. I'm not going to trust my own heart. You know, this is the heart of God when we're reading His Word. So I'm going to trust that heart. And I'm not going to whine, but I'm going to work because it's not in vain. And here's just like 3 different groups that I kind of separated our life into. But you could subcategorize it, add more, you know, because there's all kinds of them. But these are the ones I focused on. Did we read?
Mm-mm.
No. Okay, go ahead, Deb.
Therefore, my beloved brethren, be ye steadfast, unmovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord, for as much as you know that your labor is not in vain in the Lord.
Thank you. That's 1 Corinthians 15:58. Always abounding. Remember what have we said abounding means? Moving forward, okay? So if I'm in a season of life that I'm not real crazy about, and I spend all of it whining and looking forward to fall. Come on, fall, so we can have pumpkins and all that. Then I'm not learning the lessons God has for me, and I'm not abounding. I'm not moving forward. I'm kind of stuck. But remember, we've also said we never stay still in our Christian walk. Right. We don't. We are either moving forward in our Christian walk, or we are taking steps backwards. And that's not what I don't want to take a step backwards because I'm so busy whining, like, no, you know, and it may feel that way, but you can't live there. You can't stay there. You have to let God show you, okay, I need to abound in the work of the Lord. And so what's that saying? That's saying, you know, get involved in the things of God. Focus on the things of God. I sent my mom something yesterday that said, oh, if you'll forgive me, I'll just take a real look at it because it really was good. It says, worship will get you through the roughest times in your life because it shifts your focus from the problem to the problem solver. Mm-hmm. Let me read it again. Worship will get you through the roughest times in your life because it shifts your focus from the problem to the problem solver. I need always abounding in the work of the Lord. What is the work of the Lord? The things that we're doing for God. Why do we do our service to God is worship to Him. Our service to God is more than just saying, love you, Lord, and living our lives. That's not what our Christian walk is supposed to be about. Our life is supposed to be about Jesus. The whole thing. There's not supposed to be reserved parts. God, you can have Sundays, but the rest of the week is mine, and I do what I want. That is not the way that this is supposed to work. And if we're really going to abound in the work of the Lord, we're going to make it 24/7. And we have to ask the Lord to show us that because I don't know about you, but I'm a very selfish person, you know, and I have seen recently how selfish I am because when I'm like, oh, I'm tired, you know, well, you know what? That's okay. You just suck it up, Julie, and you move on. And the Lord will give you strength. It's just teaching me great dependency on Him. But that is moving forward. Always persevere to move forward in your Christian walk, to abound, because that's growth, okay? And don't ever think that you're going to just stop where you are. I'm a Sunday morning Christian, and that's it. I'm going to come to church. Now you're taking steps back. You're moving further away from the Lord. I don't know about you, but I don't want that. I want to abound in the work of the Lord. So these three groups that I said, don't waste your season whining when you can be working, not in vain. The first one is the young mama. Someday, and I can picture it right now, those wiggling fingers under the bathroom door. I was just trying to use the restroom in Germany, and it was a large bathroom, and I just went in to use the restroom. Actually, I might have not even been using the restroom. It might have just been a quiet moment where I just sat on the toilet, and I saw, both the kids' hands, both of them had them, and they were wiggling, "Mama, Mama," and I'm like, oh my word. And pretty soon it'll be just a memory, and that's what it is now. I can honestly say I tried to raise my kids and live my life as a mom in a way that I would never have regrets and think, oh, I wish I had done that. There's very little things that I would say I would do over, because I really tried to keep that in mind, and I think most of it was because we were keeping God at the center. And then everything else fall into the place. So work hard while the kids are young to teach them about Jesus, to love Jesus and to love others. That's your season, young mama. Live in it, embrace it. I think of the food bucket. My sister's like, I hate that thing. I said, I've just learned to embrace it, like, how much money can I save my dad, so don't hate things, just embrace it and think, okay, how can I do my absolute best at this, and as a young mom, teach them to love Jesus. When I said to Weston yesterday, it was a great perk of living close, and I said, we're going to go to church yesterday, and he sits up, and you could tell, that kid was excited about that. That is because he's being taught to love Jesus. Deacon loves coming to church now. You guys are obviously doing a very great job with that. I better see what time it is. Okay. And, so embrace this season of when they're young. Don't look for that next, well, I can't wait till they're teenagers. Okay, every stage has its own set of issues, so just learn to embrace the season you're in, and your seasons for other things will come. Some parents are like, I can't wait till they're grown up and out of the house. You're missing it.
Yes.
You're missing it so much. And then when you get to the place where you think it's going to be all dandy and just like you want it, you're going to realize there's things there too, and then you'll have regrets. And you don't want to have regrets there. So embrace the season you're in, embrace those little fingers wiggling under there, and just know seasons change and they pass. And pretty soon you won't have that, and you won't have, some of the stress and all that. I get it, but you also won't have those little moments, that you have good memories. And I can just picture it in my mind.
I got something to relate to that. So yesterday my daughter had a friend over, and we always play games, draw, color, and do stuff together. I was bored out of my mind when she had her friend over, because she just wanted to play with her friend. She didn't want to play with mom.
Yeah.
I was like, you guys want to play a board game?
Yeah.
No. I'm like, please? No. I'm like, fine. my husband
That's
goes,
cute, Ashley.
I cannot believe you are so bored. I'm like, but that's what I'm used to doing. We're used to playing games or
Yep.
drawing or.
And it's
something
your season of life, and so it's great
funny.
to embrace it. That's cute. The next one is an empty nester, which is where my husband and I are. Enjoy the time you now have with your spouse. Love him, cook for him, surprise him. I'll tell you, even you young mamas, I always put my husband first. I didn't serve my kids first. I always put my husband first, and it's because I watched my mom do it. That's how I learned about that. I've told you, when Mom took a pie to church, there was a piece missing because my dad is not saved and doesn't go to church. And she could have said, that'll ruin it. I'll bring you back a piece. No. She taught me about putting my dad first. And it's made a huge difference in my marriage. So, love him, cook for him, surprise him. And yes, enjoy the kids and grandkids when they come. But I'm not going to put more into Weston than I put into Pastor. It's not happening. Pastor's my husband, and I love that little boy. Oh, do I love that little boy. And Donnie, my other grandson, just love these grandbabies. But Pastor is first. And that's the way it's meant to be. So show him how thankful you are to be his best friend. Sometimes it may sound stupid to you, and that's okay. But sometimes I just yell out, love you, best friend, to my husband. and he'll like, love you, BFF, you know. And it's just what we do. But it's just important for him to know he's my best friend besides the Lord Jesus. He is my best friend. I want to be with him more than anybody else. And show him you're thankful for him and serve Jesus and pray together in this season. Who has Proverbs 18:22? Go ahead, Ashley.
Whoso findeth a wife findeth a good thing, and obtaineth favor of the Lord.
Okay, I want to be that good wife that he finds. I don't want him to say, yeah, good. I got the second, sir, you know, whatever. I want to be the good thing, you know. So empty nester, enjoy that time in life. The next one is the senior. And although often limited, this is a special season of life. Bob Alls was like one of the best examples of this. Memories are a wonderful gift, but don't live there. So many times people will say, oh, back in the day, we'll make this the day. And I get it. If you can't go out and knock doors, or you can't go do the bus route or something like that, I totally understand as a senior. But you can pray and ask the Lord to show you what you can do in this season of your life. You know, there are just things that you're not going to be physically capable of, but there are things you can do. For the longest time, Bob Alls read the scripture. Before that, he had gone out with my husband visiting on Thursday night, and maybe they could only go out for 20 minutes. That's okay. And that's the way I feel too. You want to go out for 15 minutes and knock 2 doors? I'm with you. Let me know. It doesn't have to be long. Just ask the Lord to show you what you can do to serve him in this season of your life as the senior. And become a prayer warrior. Who has James 5:16? Go ahead, Teresa.
It says, confess your faults one to another and pray one for another, that ye may be healed. The effectual fervent prayer of a righteous man availeth much.
Okay, be a prayer warrior and be that righteous woman. You know, I know it says man, but it means us too. Become a prayer warrior. So don't waste the season of your life, young mama, empty nester, or senior. And then another tip is understand that God knows best, and he has equipped you with warm clothing, which is peace, for the colder weather, which is the hard times. You know, Isaiah 55:8, we'll just do that one. Isaiah 55:8, if anyone has that one. Donna?
For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, saith the Lord.
In the hard times, understand that. I have to understand, I can't see what the end of all this is with my mom. And that's hard. I feel like I want to, so that I can prepare either way. But that's not the way it works. God's the one that sees beginning to end. My part in it is to trust him and obey him. And that's what I can do, and understand that in this season of life, of uncertainty, of, you know, maybe being a bit more difficult, God has given me a peace that passes all understanding because I can trust him. I know that whatever the future holds, whatever that scan on Monday shows, whatever that surgeon says to her on Thursday, God knows. And his thoughts and his ways are not mine. And I can trust him. And so, I mean, God forbid, but if they came back and said, your mom is full of cancer, that is not the answer I'm looking for. But I will praise him just the same and understand he sees beginning to end. I wanted to go the other way, and they were like, where's that cancer? You know, but when Mom and I pray each night for the chemo to kill the bad cells and the tumor and the cancer, but to leave everything else alone, and I pray this, sounds silly, but I pray this, God, bubble wrap every organ, every cell, every blood vessel, everything. Bubble wrap it and put a shield of protection about it. Don't let that chemo get to it. That's my prayer. And I remember in the beginning, my sisters are like, what? I said, yes, I'm a visual person, and I'm actually visualizing all of that. But the next thing that we always pray is, but thy will be done. Because he knows what I don't. And I'm just going to, and that's what my mom's like, either way. And so understand that he does give peace for those harder times when they come. The next point, trust God's timing of when and how long a season is if you want something beautiful. So Ecclesiastes 3:11. Who has that one? Anyone? Go ahead, Donna.
He hath made everything beautiful in his time. Also he has set the world in their heart, so that no man can find out the work that God maketh from the beginning to the end.
It's all God's timing. You want something beautiful? You wait on God. I need to wait on God for this so I can see the beauty in it. If I want to mess it up, try to do things in my time. Expect things in my time. But the way to do it is just to let go. Just say, okay, God, thy will be done however you want this to do. I'm just going to trust and obey. I'm going to acknowledge you in all my ways, and I'm going to trust you. And then the last one, keep the things that God has taught and shown you in other seasons readily accessible for if and when you need them in your current season. Philippians 4:9. Go ahead, Teresa.
It says, those things which ye have both learned and received and heard and seen in me, do, and the God of peace shall be with you.
The God of peace shall be with me. Isn't that amazing? I love that. I am learning some bucket lessons. You know, and it may sound silly. That's okay. I don't mind sounding silly because I know it means something to me. I know when I come home, I'm going to be more conscious of how much food I'm wasting. And I'm applying it to every area of my life. I know the hard things, the difficult things that I'm learning, and I will learn. I'm going to have them in my hip pocket, and God's going to say, do you remember when that happened and how I came through for you? But you had to wait on me, Julie. You had to listen and you had to obey. Do it again. And that's what we need to do, is as we learn, you just kind of store it for later. And just, you know, what good is a lesson if you don't learn it and apply it later, you know? So God, just help me to learn these lessons. Help me to dress for the season I'm in, and help me not to despise the season and just waste it by looking forward to another season, you know, because he's got things to teach us. That's why he gives us seasons. So dress for success, friends. All right. And would anyone like to close us in a word of prayer? Go ahead, Dip.
Dear Father in heaven, thank you for today, that we could get together and to worship